uncomfortable and uneasy and hard for us as a family. But we don't have a choice anymore. It's in the interest of Mary's safety, in the interest of public safety, that we share the wrongdoings, the poor practices, the misdiagnosis, which has led us to where we are right now. My sister Mary is 54 years old, and prior to her hospitalisation, she had appointed me as her advocate and her attorney. She had asked me to seek the answers. She had asked me to be her voice. And I represent my family here today to talk about the things that are so distressing. In fact, we contemplated sharing some of the images, but we felt it wouldn't be fair, or it may trigger some people because they're quite distressing. In 2020, her sister started to show a decline mentally, mobility-wise, coordination-wise, her decision-making, all of which were very concerning to us. And we did notice that she just wasn't herself. So we did ask the medical team, could they rule out something neurological? They done the scan. They told us that the white spots that were present were due to her diabetes and the hypos in particular. So we trusted that information. And, you know, while we did see like further decline, we kind of just were reassured that that's what it was and there wouldn't possibly be anything else. However, again, in 2023, Mary had been getting her toe dressed by her public health nurse, and on the advice of them, they asked her to present to A&E. On that day she presented, had a long waiting period, was discharged on the same day without any treatment and without any antibiotic. But a week or two later, Mary's toe had deteriorated dramatically, and on return to the hospital, it was advised that an amputation was required of that toe. So obviously this was the first of many mistakes. While she was waiting for that operation, it had been cancelled 2 times, and she fell while she was waiting for that operation. She fell 2 or 3 times. Each time I would get a call to tell me that she'd fallen, that she wasn't injured. I would speak with Mary. She would say she was very sore. But the last fall in particular was the most serious. The last fall, she had an x-ray. They called me, told me the x-ray was reviewed and that there was no break, there was nothing. So again, when we tried to reassure Mary that night when she was in excruciating pain, crying to us, we told her, no, the x-ray was done, there's nothing broke, love, you know, you just have to just give it time. That's what we thought. Until the next day we got another call from the orthopaedic team to tell us that they missed the break. And that meant that she lay there all evening, all night with a broken hip. They then told us that she required the amputation. We had to wait till the vascular team and the orthopaedic team could agree the surgical procedure. So this in turn led to further delay. This delay then meant that Mary's outcome and her mobility was going to be compromised. In fact, we now know it was permanently compromised. Following that hospitalisation, she was sent to transferred to a step down. And that hospital contacted us to tell us that Mary's bladder stopped working. And again, this was all kind of just so hard for us to understand. They used the term neurogenic. We didn't understand what that meant. We asked them could they explain it in more detail. They said that basically the signal from the brain had told the bladder to stop working. They felt that Mary was presenting with an awful lot of neurological symptoms, and on their advice they said that we should seek a full neurological review. We told them we had that done in 2021, and you know that we were reassured that there wasn't anything there. So they said, no, it's likely there is something there and it will have to be reviewed. They told us they couldn't unfortunately perform that test and she'd have to go as an outpatient. But in the meantime, they had done the referral to the Limerick Regional Hospital. So, excuse me, after that time, Mary's wish was always to come home. She missed everybody. She missed her family, she missed her daughter, she missed her grandchild, and now a second grandchild. So we did everything we could. We had blocks and challenges to try and get the supports in place. Because of her age, she didn't qualify. So eventually we did succeed in getting some help. It was full-time help, but when you require 2 carers, it means that it's cut in half. So whilst it was full hours, when it's 2 people, it was cut down. So which ultimately meant 3 hours a day. 3 hours a day to provide help for someone that was insulin dependent, was bedbound, had no physical ability to do anything for herself, and along with all the other cognitive impairment we were seeing, it just became evident it wasn't safe. The catheter itself, because the neurogenic bladder meant that she had to have a permanent catheter, and that was causing problems, requiring many a visit from Pathways. So as a family and with Mary, the agreement was made that she'd go to a nursing home. And we were very lucky. We found a fabulous nursing home, Ennis Nursing Home, where she settled in and the family were really treated well. And we were allowed to visit her, and it gave her some bit of normality back. But unfortunately, the catheter brings its own setbacks, and it meant that she had to have more hospitalizations in and out with infections. But in particular this time, just March just gone, Mary went by ambulance to the hospital. She was very unwell, but we didn't know what. So we went to see her that evening, and we did identify a couple of things, and we brought it to the attention of staff. And again, because she was in a resus, we thought, okay, she's getting the best care possible within that A&E department. So it was the next morning I got the call to say that Mary was septic due to an obstruction, and that a family member had to come in and give written consent because it was a very high risk. So obviously I lived more than an hour away, and that's what they had requested within the hour. So I contacted my brother, and he done that. So that procedure was done, and then Mary was in HDU for 2 days, and then she was prematurely, in our opinion, transferred to a busy ward. Mary's aftercare didn't appear to be consistent, and we felt that instead of getting better, she was actually getting worse. So the family started to kind of micromanage a lot of the care, and especially knowing that she'd been septic and we had already lost our father through sepsis, there were a lot of things that we were aware of that we weren't comfortable with, and we would call out and ask the questions. On 2 or 3 occasions, Mary was so ill, not communicating, not being able to do anything. It frustrated us. And we noticed that her feet were stuck to the end of the bed. And on observations, we noticed that there was pressure sores all over her foot, her toe. We were absolutely disgusted. We went out, we addressed it with the staff, we asked for management, I wrote to the patient advocate liaison team. We were so distressed because this is the same foot that she had her toe removed from. Bearing in mind she is a diabetic, it meant that extra care, extra monitoring, extra observations would have been required. So again, we looked for intervention from the vascular team, and they did review, and some of the skin was removed and the fluid-filled blisters were burst, and the foot was left open. And again, we just felt like, is this enough? Is this enough actual care for someone this sick for that particular thing, especially when she's after just recovering or still recovering from sepsis? The advice was, and the recommendation was, that a tissue viability nurse would monitor. And we just felt like every time we'd come there were more blisters, and we were like, is this been monitored? And then we were told there's only one tissue viability nurse in the hospital, and it isn't possible for daily monitoring. So it meant that the family had to continue to do this. But there were also other medical presentations that we were seeing and noticing that we started to ask the questions, what medical consultant is she under now? And then we were told there is none. But we were unsure as to why, because these were medical presentations. So we met with the urology team, who confirmed that while they're still treating Mary, they were finished their surgical procedure and really they weren't required anymore. But because of Mary's presentations, we asked the question, whose responsibility is it? If a patient is in here, is there no shared care? Should you not be involved in other departments? Why are we the one looking for medical intervention? We should be reassured that she's safe and that you're doing everything possible to rule out the cause of all these things that we're seeing. And there are too many to explain right now. We were then told that they did seek the intervention of a medical team. On our request, we asked for Mary's care to be transferred to a medical team. The medical teams refused to accept her care. They refused to accept her care from urology to medical. For what reason we don't know, on what grounds we don't know, but we have suspicions as to why. However, we have not been told as a family what is the reason why Mary has no medical team, despite having lots of medical issues. The medical staff, the team alone in the ward know that medical help is needed. The consultant himself, in the presence of a patient advocate officer, said medical help is needed. While we're grateful and he's doing the referrals, it's not his place to do these referrals. He's not in a position to carry out the treatment that's needed or the new presentations that we're seeing. He's not in a position to do that. So where does that leave us? We're asking, please, can this be sorted? We're bringing it to the attention of the public because this could be your brother or sister, where you just assume that the medical help is automatically shared, and when a team is needed here, there and everywhere, that it's not like that. And we do ask the question, there are so many people with sepsis, there are so many people with surgical procedures, there are so many people that require the help of just one team, why there isn't a shared care approach. And it isn't the norm, they don't do it. It's very much, you stay with that team, that's the team, and they don't cross over. This can't be right. That politics cannot be right. Another thing that we're really frustrated about is Mary's not able to provide herself with the basic things that you and I can do. Mary is waiting for someone to change her, to move her bed, to lift her up in the bed, to move her down in the bed. Mary's waiting for someone to help her with her phone. Mary's waiting for somebody to open a bottle, give her a drink. She cannot do the things that are needed for basic living, and yet she was denied a full-time health care assistant. This can't be safe practice. Bearing in mind all of these things that happened to Mary are not her fault. Bearing in mind there was opportunity time and time again for these things to be picked up and for interventions to be put in place, and it didn't happen. We're asking the public to come behind us, because our sister right now is experiencing so many medical and neurological symptoms. Only this week we learned that Mary does have a neurological disease. She does have a brain disease. The condition itself has progressed. It is progressive. And my brother and I viewed the images, and it was present in 2021. Even though it has presentation of old and new lesions, it was there. The information was there. There may not have been a treatment for it, but at least the information shared, the knowledge shared, her pathway would have been completely different. The resources available to her would have been completely different. Her life in general would have been completely different if we had known. Because we would have stepped in as a family and ensured that the help was got. Because it's hard as a family to trust the system and trust what they told you, that this is the case, and then a lot of the time we didn't understand what was happening. We're asking the government to intervene. We're asking them because all doors have been closed to us. We're asking them to do the right thing, to expedite her legal situation so that Mary has been given a voice, has dignity. Because right now the conditions that she's experiencing have no doubt changed the outcome of her life expectancy. So for us, we're waiting for the answers. We're waiting for the support, and without the intervention from government, this cannot happen. And we are asking the public to please, in the interest of your loved ones, and especially if they're vulnerable, ask the questions, seek second opinions. Don't do what we did, because now Mary has paid the price, the ultimate price. Thank you.